part 2 of the Virginia Online Notary Meetup. In part 2, if you like this content, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to our podcast. In part 2, we're going to be interviewing Mike Wright.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Mike Wright. I own a business called Tax Right. And to let you know why a guy from Indiana is somebody you want to hear from, I'm what's called an enrolled agent, which means I'm authorized by the IRS to deal with clients all over the country. And that means that the kinds of things that you may have that are federal federal items, I can help you take care of those. So, Daniel, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I've worked with Daniel in Indiana on several meetups like this, and I think it's a very interesting thing because notaries have some special things going for them in the federal tax law, and I like for people to understand that. Also, to understand his comments about being an independent business are very important. And one of the things that you as a business owner want to be sure that you're doing is all the things that you need to do to prove that you're a business. I was talking with someone earlier this week who said, a lot of people claim to be businesses, but they're really not. And the reason they're really not is they don't do the things that businesses are supposed to do. And so I like to talk to people. My specialty is and always has been working with startup and small business to help them get the most out of their tax savings, but also to help them get the most that they can make in their business. So I just wanted to share a few things with you today in anticipation of the fact that it's October, we're in the fourth quarter of the year, and at December 31st, we start a whole new year. For tax purposes, that means that everything that you can do for your taxes for 2024 have to be done in the next 3 months, or it won't make any difference. You'll be stuck with whatever you've set up already. So let me talk about a few items. First off, let me mention that if you have a question, please put it in the chat. If you want to ask me a question at another time, please send me an email. My email is mike@taxright.net. And I'll be glad to answer your question and perhaps help you if that makes sense. But let's talk about the things that I wanted to talk about today. The first one is really time sensitive because it's a new requirement that the federal government has installed. It comes from the Treasury Department, not from the IRS, but from the Treasury. And it's the beneficial owner information that you're required to give to them. If your business was started prior to January 1st of 2024, you have until December 31st of 2024 to make that filing. That's the only big window that you have to get those filings made. If you started your business in 2024, you have 90 days to make the filing. And although we're already past that, if you start a business in 2025, you will only have 30 days to make this filing. So if you've got a business that was created, and by a business, I mean an LLC, a partnership, a corporation. If you have any business like that, you have to make this filing by the end of December. It's not a difficult filing to make, but it is absolutely necessary that you do so. FinCEN.gov/BOI. FinCEN.gov/BOI. I don't know why I keep on org. It's not an org, it's a gov. There's no two ways about that. But it's the Financial Crimes Investigation Unit, FinCEN. They're the ones you file this with. There's no cost to make the filing, but it is something that you absolutely must do. Second thing I want you to start thinking about is your bookkeeping for the end of the year. I'm sure you all are very good and keep up to date every minute with the business that you have, and you keep records of it in your QuickBooks or your notary gadget or whatever it is, I'm sure that that's true of all of you. But if something makes you think that you should check it out, this is the time to do it. Because if you do have things that need to be caught up, you've got until the end of the year to catch them up. And I want to make a specific notification about some things I've seen from clients of mine that are in your business that use the Notary Gadget software. Notary Gadget is very good at separating out those excluded portions of what you do, the notarial actions that are not taxed by the federal government for employment taxes. However, you as the notary have to be sure that you have entered those notarial act amounts in the Notary Gadget. And I just have seen a few of my clients have done that, and I've asked them about it, and it slipped their mind. They may have forgotten to do it, or of course, there's also the possibility that the thing that you're entering as a sale didn't have any notarial acts, and so it wouldn't be added. I'm just trying to remind you to stay aware and keep on top of understanding that because it's very important. I also want to point out that one of the things that you need to be considering is what kind of business you have created. If you have an LLC that has yourself as the sole member, that's going to be treated by the IRS just as if it was a Schedule C on your personal 1040. If you've declared that you want to be treated as a corporation, now you'd be filing a Form 1120S for a small corporation. If you have more than one member in your LLC, that requires a partnership return or a corporate filing. The point is, there are different kinds of tax returns that might apply to your business, and you need to understand specifically how your business is organized to make sure that you're filing the right return. And that's also important because all the time you see this stuff on TV and online, it talks about the April 15th filing deadline. But if you have a corporate or a partnership return to file, a small corporation or a partnership return to file, that has to be filed by March 15th, which is 30 days earlier than the regular tax return. So I see y'all nodding, so you all already know this. But when you're talking to other notaries, just get the word out because it's easy enough not to remember to do these kinds of small details. Going back to the bookkeeping areas, I also want to recommend that you take this opportunity to make sure that your mileage records are up to date. As you know, you can deduct your mileage at the standard rate, and you want to be sure that you have those records in a format that is supportable using a notebook or some kind of software, but just make sure that you've done all the things you need to do. And this is the time of year to do it. And then finally, I want to mention the fact that if you're in business and you're paying the taxes on your business profits, you need to be making estimated tax payments. And if that's something that you haven't done or that you've overlooked, or perhaps you haven't made enough profit up until this time in the year to pay those estimated taxes, it's time to take another look at them because it's not too late to pay estimates now and have them count for 2024. And by doing that, that by itself doesn't reduce your taxes overall, but what it does do is reduce the tax that you might have to pay at the time you file. Plus which it can keep you from some penalties for underpayment that might come up if you haven't paid enough as the year's gone on. So just some reminders that are typical of the kinds of things that I work with people on, and I just thought I'd share them with you today. But I'll be glad to answer any of your questions if you have any. Such a knowledgeable group, Daniel.
Well, Mike, I know this is a question that usually comes up. I'm a notary signing agent. I'm just moving from corporate America into my own becoming a notary entrepreneur. Should I do sole proprietor, LLC, S Corp? What are some of the advantages to getting like an LLC or S Corp?
The reason to set up a business entity is to protect your personal assets. That's the number one reason you set up something aside from just being a sole proprietor. And that's a very important thing to do. It's also one of the first things that people look at to prove that you consider yourself a business. Because if you go to the trouble to make the filings to set up the business entity, you're saying, I consider myself separate as a business. If you're, as I mentioned before, if you're a single member LLC, however, you're treated by the IRS just as if you are a sole proprietor. And so there are advantages to having your LLC treated as if it was an S corp. You can take the advantage of paying yourself a salary. You can pay your employment taxes through the year as you pay your salary. And if your salary is reasonable, in other words, you're paying yourself the same kind of money that someone working for a third party would get paid, and you have profits over and above that salary, you're going to save 15% employment taxes because you will not pay employment taxes on those profits. You will pay taxes, don't get me wrong, it's not a free lunch, but you don't pay the employment taxes. I've worked with a lot of clients that we've been able to readjust the way they do their stuff, and I've saved people $8, $10, $12,000 in a single year from year to year because they were paying all those extra employment taxes and they didn't need to. But it does mean that you have to get things set up that way. If you set that stuff up right now, it's true, it won't make any impact on what you've done so far, but you will have established yourself and you'll realize those savings a little bit this year, but you'll realize the greater savings as time goes on. My screen just flipped. I don't know what made that happen. Everybody switched positions. Did you all get up and move around the room?
I raised my hand.
Okay.
Jacqueline
Okay,
has a question.
I had a question. So for some of us that are notaries here, we aren't only notaries, we're also educators. So that falls under a whole different category, correct? As far as education, because we don't have any notarial acts to reduce our income, right? On that side of it. So do you recommend that we set up a separate LLC for where we're doing our education than what we do for our notary business?
I'm telling you this just based upon our conversation. These are my weasel words, my disclaimers. So you understand I'm doing that. But here's the thing. Probably it makes sense to separate the two businesses because if you do something wrong in one aspect, your other aspect is still protected. It's the same reason you protect your personal assets. Now you're protecting each of these businesses separate. And if something does go wrong, it's much, much harder. I must admit, it's not impossible, but it's much, much harder for anybody to get anything with the other business. So yes, now the downside of that is obvious. You're going to have to file more tax returns. You're going to have to make more filings with the state. And so there's going to be more expense built in there. So you have to decide for yourself. I have no way of knowing what your situation is, but if you're making $100,000 a year, for example, and $90,000 of it is notary work and 10,000 is education, the extra expense of separating the education may not be worth it. But if you decide that I'm going to keep doing the notary work, but this education stuff is going to grow and grow and grow, then go ahead and start from the beginning, because it's always harder to change something, but you also don't want to forget the fact that you can change things if you need to. So that was a long answer for a simple question.
No, that was
yes
really,
no.
that was a great answer. That was a great answer. And I think notaries need to know that because a lot of notaries do want to dive into becoming the educator and how do you make sure that you stay out of trouble with Uncle Sam, and you did that well. Thank you.
That's what I'm all about, is keeping people out of trouble, myself included. Anything else?
What type of taxes do notaries that are independent contractors need to be aware of?
Well, of course, I'm not familiar with Virginia's tax system. So, but there will be Virginia income tax, I'm sure. But the same kinds of principles will apply in every case. You will have your income tax, but there's also on the federal level, there is the employment taxes, which is your Medicare and Social Security. And of course, for the specific notarial acts, that tax does not apply. But I don't know about you guys. You may do things differently, but I know in Indiana, a lot of the notary businesses do a variety of other activities that don't count as notarial acts. And so for them, they've got to consider the full self-employment tax for that as well. So you do have to be aware of that. Now, if you have a business that's big enough that you have employees working for you, you've got other kinds of taxes that you're concerned about besides withholding. You've got unemployment taxes to worry about. You may, of course, and like I said, there will be the state tax, but I'm not going to try and go there. I found that this is just something I thought was interesting. Ohio doesn't tax businesses that have profits less than $250,000. They get off tax-free in Ohio. And that's what you got to go and go to the state legislature and get them to put that kind of exemption for Virginia as well.
And that's something to talk about when include in the conversation when you're talking about raising fees, but then you can start having tax strategy conversations with your legislators about that and how that would benefit your business. Speaking of that, can you tell us a little bit about what we can deduct, like supplies, travel, marketing, training expenses?
I like this question because the answer there really is simple. You can deduct everything. All done. No, the law says that you can deduct all necessary and regular expenses for your business. If you'll send me an email, I'll send you back a form that will give you a description of what that means. I just wrote up a new one. And it talks about how do you decide what's ordinary and necessary? How do you decide what should apply in your case and what shouldn't apply in another case? But you can deduct everything that you spend money on for your business is deductible from the business profits. I mean, I can't make it. I'm telling you a list. You tell me something, and I'll tell you whether it's deductible or not. But if you send me your email information, I will get you a copy of that report on that issue.
I know notaries bring up often, can I get my nails done and be considered a business expense? Because I need to make sure that my hands look good as I sign those documents.
Do your nails have the name of your business on them?
I'm telling you, notaries will do that real quick. I will put my logo on my fingernails.
There is a notary in Kokomo, Indiana. She says nails, notary nails, or something like that. And she has a picture of her nails. She always has her nails done. I'm glad you asked that. So I believe in that case, Mike, would she be able to file a deduction on
Quite
the nails?
serious. The nails would have to show something about the business specifically. Not just being attractive nails, that's very nice, but if it had your business name on the nails, that's advertising. It's the same thing as when people put their logo on their truck. The logo on the truck is advertising, so it's exactly the same thing. I had one guy tell me, since I have my logo on my truck, can I count every mile I drive as a business mile? No, can't do that because you're just driving the truck. Now, the advertising, though, the printing of the stuff on the truck, that is deductible as advertising. I had a lady that was executive director of a not-for-profit that had to go to an annual ball, and the formal gowns that they wore were quite expensive, and she wanted to know if she could write them off. And I said no, and the reason was just the same. I said, now, if it was made with fabric that had the logo of the charity on it, then you could. The idea is not to be smart alecky, but the idea is it has to be something that is different from what you would just normally use in your day-to-day life. So the
So
name
throw
is
your
different.
logo. Put your logo on your shirt. Put your logo on your polo.
Yep.
Whatever you're wearing, get it embroidered, stamp it. I don't care how you get it on there.
Tattoo it on your chest if you want, whatever makes sense.
Another question that always comes up, Mike, and this is a kind of a loaded question, how long should I keep receipts, invoices, and financial documents for taxes? How long should I keep those?
The taxpayer is required to keep those things for 3 years after the year in question. So if you file 2023, then you need to keep 2023's records until 2027. Because 2020, yeah, that's right. The 7 year thing, which most people seem to have, I don't know where that came from, but that's not true. However, I will say this. If you have some kind of transaction that goes on during the year that still has some relevance to your current financial situation, even though it's well past 2023 filing, you should keep those records to be able to prove that. But that's simply because you want to be able to have the original documents to prove whatever it is you're doing once you finally do that thing, whether it's sell a property, sell stocks, bonds, things like that. But 3 years is what you want to keep in mind.
How do I calculate quarterly taxes? Or a better question is, because I hear a lot of notaries do this, I'm going to save a bunch of money. I'm going to get my brother-in-law, sister, cousin who works at the gas station to do my taxes instead of going to a professional. What is the advantages of going to a professional, a person that does this for a living, than getting the brother-in-law, sister, cousin that works at the gas station? Oh, I knew them since high school. They'll do my taxes. What is the advantage?
Well, the obvious advantage is that if, well, look, I don't know how to go here without sounding just really cruel, but if your brother-in-law, cousin, sister, whatever, if they have experience doing taxes, even if it's not professional experience, that might be one thing. But if they're doing as a career, pumping gas or doing nails or whatever, their knowledge of that topic is probably not as great. A professional is bound not only, well, a professional like me, as I said, I'm an enrolled agent. So I'm bound by IRS rules and regulations on how I do things. I have continuing education requirements all year long. I've taken exams to prove that I know stuff about taxes. So all of those things are building up my competence, plus which I do 200 or 300 tax returns a year. I suspect that the gas station attendant might do 4 or 5, but he's still not doing 200 or 300. And I've been doing it for 25 years. So I've literally done thousands of tax returns. Now, yes, I understand many of them were repeats, but they were repeats as the tax law changed. And so I can pick up information or understanding from that. It's one of the most important things that anyone that relies upon a tax professional, you have to be able to rely on their understanding of what's going on, because you may think something is right and you may put it forward, but they may have doubts about it and they may be able to explain to you why those doubts are valid, or they may be able to bring the connections together and increase your ability to deduct something because they know something that they did with so and so 6 years ago that still applies to the tax law today, and so forth. So it's just all because everything is bound together. When you do education, that's what you're doing. You're sharing the total knowledge that you have as an educator. And that not only includes just the bare bones facts out of the books, it includes your experience in doing the teaching. And so doing the taxes are exactly the same thing. I get in there and I do the taxes and I think about how to do it better. And so it's going to make it better for you or anybody that I work with.
Great answers. other question I have, I don't want to hog all the questions, but I do have another question if anybody doesn't have a question. And this comes up a lot. If I just started my notary business, I've been doing my notary business for a while, and I just operated as a sole proprietor, can I now change to an LLC, to an S Corp, or if, the other way, I operated as an S Corp, but I want to change it to an LLC. Can I make that change?
Sure. You can always make a change. The date of its effectiveness might be different than you want because, like I said earlier, you can't go back and make something retroactive, but you can do it on a going forward basis. There are a few changes that do require the IRS's permission to do, but they're none of the things that you've talked about. But if somebody comes to you and says they would like to make a change, then again, they want to talk about it with a professional to make sure that the change and also to understand what the consequences will be once they make that change. But yeah, it's always possible to change stuff.
Any other questions from the floor?
No, just coming from a tax professional, I was an accountant for many years, and an enrolled agent is definitely where you want to be at when you're having someone who's looking at your taxes. Like you said, he's approved by the IRS. So who is going to know the laws better than an enrolled agent? So I would definitely highly recommend a notary to get an enrolled agent to be the person that's doing their tax returns. So thank you, Mike. You've done an awesome job from another tax professional to you.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Anything else I can do for you today?
Any other? Going once, going twice. I don't see any other questions, Mike. You're awesome. We got to have you back. We are planning on having these at least once a month, like we do here in Indiana. We got to have you back because people need this information and they need to understand their business. Understanding your taxes and having a tax strategy is so important for the longevity of your business. So having you here, Mike, I really appreciate you coming. I know you're a busy guy. I really appreciate you coming. I put Mike's email address in the chat and also his website in the chat so you can get in contact with him. It's so important from a standpoint of a business entrepreneur to talk to somebody like Mike that understands your business. It's so important because there's a lot of tax professionals out there that really don't understand the whole notary business. Mike has a great understanding of the notary business. And so if you want to get in contact with him, if you have any follow-up questions, I'm sure you can email Mike and follow up with him.
And I have to say thanks to Daniel because what I know about the notary business, I've learned from him. So that's a good thing.
That's a good thing. Any other last questions for Mike? No other last questions for Mike? Okay, then we're going to move on. I am so glad. We're going to just wrap up then a little earlier. If we have any last questions for Mike, last questions for the panel. The panel, do you want to any last minute thoughts that you want to give?
I'm going to give a thought. Like, I love the online meeting. I hoping that more notaries will jump on as we start doing these on a regular basis. But definitely want to talk about Maryland Public Day. Daniel, you're coming all the way from Indiana to come out and support us here in the DMV area. That's amazing. He's done this for numbers of years now. Laura will be there. I'll be there. Hopefully we can get Georgette to come join us as well as a Virginia notary ambassador for the NNA. But I'll drop the link in the chat as well. Go ahead and register. I think it's like, what is it? Like $25. And you get 2 days. The first day is virtual. So it's November 8th, my birthday. So come join me for my birthday. I'll be there virtually. November 8th. It's from 6 to 9. And Miss Elaine Wright does a phenomenal job just bringing in different educators from across the United States to make sure that notaries are being educated in all things notary And then the second day is in person from 8:30 to 5:30. We're meeting there at Prince George's Community College. Awesome campus. They do an awesome job supporting the notary community there. And then we have folks from the NNA that come in and do some guest speaking. And then she has some breakout sessions. So I just think in person, I'm a big in-person meetup person. So take advantage of these last few. It's going to be Notary Public Day. Come out and enjoy Notary Public Day. This is what we do. We're notaries and it's in person. And I think it's just a great opportunity for notaries to be at.
Excellent, excellent. I just wanted to also say, take this time to invite you to the National Notary Association Conference that's going to be in June, I believe. That's going to be in Las Vegas. It's supposed to be the best conference ever, so you want to come. The reason why you want to come to those conferences is because they have vendors, they have that are looking to employ notaries. There's a lot of great speakers there, so. And I believe, and Mike can correct me on this, I believe when you go to those conferences and stuff, that could be a write-off, correct? What? You muted yourself, Mike.
Oh, sorry, hit the wrong button. Absolutely, it's deductible. I could even show you how to bring your family along.
Oh, now he's talking. Bring your family to Vegas and make it tax deductible.
Well, part of it, yeah.
Yeah, that's a conversation to be had.
Yeah, so that's great. See, that's one of the reasons to just come. Just that one little nugget is one of the reasons to come to these online meetups. Yes. Yeah. Anything you want to add, Georgette or Laura?
No, it's just an awesome meeting. I'm doing a lot of note taking. So I appreciate being here and learning and gleaning from everyone.
Yes, Daniel, thank you for having me. And, for other notaries, it's important for them to know we may be labeled as notary ambassadors and professionals, but we are learning and growing each and every time we have an interaction. So that's another takeaway for new notaries. Us being seasoned, we're still learning and growing. So that's even more reason for them to understand the importance of education and to continue to educate themselves along their career as a notary.
Yeah, I love these meetups because I'm taking a ton of notes from all of you. It's been such a great time, and we're going to start. I'm going to try to do this for the rest of the year. See how it goes. Rest of the year, have once a month meetups. I'll send out a link. I really enjoy having everybody, all the guest speakers here. It's been a wealth of knowledge, and I think the more we have these, the stronger we are as a group in each state. So thanks again, and I think, any other comments?
No, thank you, Daniel, for lighting the fire underneath us to get this done.
Oh, it's gonna be great. Usually at these meetups, we have people like professionals like Mike come in talking about tax strategies. We usually bring in attorneys to talk about whether it's estate planning or what they look for in notaries, real estate agents, escrow officers coming in and say, this is what we look for, this is what we are looking for in that. And I also have to mention, I wrote a note to myself, for new notaries, if you're looking at more information, I have a podcast found exclusively on YouTube. It's called the Notary Podcast. If you go on YouTube, do the search engine and put in the Notary Podcast. On that podcast, I've interviewed the National Notary Association CEO, owners of signing agent companies, signing schedulers, escrow officers, and some of the questions I asked. If I'm a brand new notary, how do I get on your platform? How do I ask questions about taxes? I ask questions about contracts. Ask questions about managing the business and branding your business. And that's a free podcast. So if you go on YouTube, search the Notary Podcast. In fact, Laura Jarrett's going to be one of our special guests on the podcast coming soon. And hopefully, if I could talk Jacqueline Phillips and Georgette to be on the podcast. I really appreciate that. But yeah, we have a lot of notaries on the podcast, a lot of notary experts on the podcast, and we hope that you go on, subscribe, like, share the podcast, and even share it in your groups. And I'm recording this, so hopefully we can share this in your groups, and so people can get more great information like they had here. So that is, I don't see any. Oh yeah, Jacqueline put in Lane Wright Harris's the next big event next month. That's coming in pretty soon. Is the Maryland Notary Day. That's a huge event. They have a great event. Not only is it a great event for learning, but it's very entertaining. They have this fantastic fashion show that they have each and every year. And when I first heard a fashion show for notaries, I said, what in the world? But it is the greatest thing. Hopefully I'll see all of you there. It's right at the Prince George, what is that?
Prince George's Community College. Mm-hmm.
Community College. It is great. I'm going to be there, so I want you there. And I'm going to be there with my podcast. Hopefully I can get some of you fantastic notaries on the podcast when we're there. It's going to be great. So definitely, I'm glad, Jacqueline, you mentioned that. So yes. So we are going to end a little bit early. We're going to give you back your day, your weekend. Thanks so much for being here, and I hope everybody has a great rest of your weekend. Have a great day.